Hello, this is Mike, NoStressMike.com. I thought I'd talk a little bit more about why I think weird. I think a little different than most people. My concept of living life is different, and a lot of this I haven't talked about before, and the reason is I'm a forgive and forget type of guy. Well, forgive, I don't. It's in the back of my mind, and I prepare not to allow it to happen again in the way of bad things. And this is what I want to talk about. I try not to let... I don't like it when people whine. And this is what I don't really want this to come across as I'm whining it. But and I say, I don't... And I say, remember when I was talking about 18, you turn 18, okay, now forget stuff that's been in the past. You have to go on with your life and don't drag all this baggage with you. Okay, well, this is what I'm gonna open up some baggage with you. And the thing is, okay, still there's going to be some stuff I don't want to talk about, but we'll start when I was maybe 6, 7 years old. We'll start at that. And from about 6 or 7 on up to, I'd say maybe 12. That would be in the early 60s, be the John F. Kennedy days. So from about 6 or 7 on up to 11, maybe 12. I was born and raised in Kansas. And at that time, this had been in the 50s and the middle late 50s on up to the first of the 60s. There were places I couldn't go. They had whites and they had blacks. And this was in Kansas now. And so there was places that I knew I couldn't go. They just wouldn't allow me in to these places. This is what I mentioned. Well, I don't know. I think I mentioned before. Not in my public videos, but some of the restricted ones. I went to an all-white school, and it was Topeka, Kansas. And you can look it up. It was Brown versus the Topeka Board of Education. It was the last segregated school system in the United States. And but it wasn't so bad at that time. It was worse before, and this is what I'm talking about. So there was places I couldn't go. And then there was riots. You don't know what riots are. Right now, this is, September of 2018. Anybody much younger than me, they don't realize how bad it was back in those days. I mean, the blacks and whites were getting after it. Now, I'm talking about in Kansas. So I don't know about other parts, but you'd think, flyover country, there's nothing going on in Kansas. There was a lot going on. In the news, you hear about down south, but it was in Kansas. And then there was times clear up. Well, I'd like to say I quit high school in my senior year, when I was February of my senior year. It was really, really bad. I mean, I would have I had whites and I had blacks both coming after me. It wasn't so much in grade school, like I say, maybe 11, 10, 11, it wasn't so bad, maybe 12, it wasn't so bad. It just started getting really, really bad after that. You're a little kid, so you just, you're no threat to nobody, and you just say, get out of here, and you just go, so it's no big deal. But after that, it started getting, people come at me with weapons, and it wasn't one, it was normally a whole lot of them. Anywhere from, half a dozen to, maybe 50. And this was blacks and the whites. This was really severe times. They were burning cars. I don't remember any houses being burned, but they were burning cars. They burned crosses, and you would think, what you hear about is KKK doing it. It wasn't KKK. People would do that. The wannabes, they want to act like I'm associated with the KKK, like I'm associated with the Hell's Angels, or I'm associated with, whatever, this is the crap that was going on. And so this was going on with me and in my world. And there was many times that they would surround me, and you're a little kid, so 16 years old, you don't know what's going to happen. And they would, normally I got out of everything. Like I say, I was kind of like I am now, pretty spirited. And when I see the fights getting ready to start, I'd start. I wouldn't wait till they started beating on me. They start surrounding you. Something's getting ready to happen. And so that's what I started doing then. And then, like I say, I quit school. I went into the Marines, and the people I wanted to show people, hey, I'm an American, just like everybody else, even though nobody thought I was. This is why I'm not real big on mixed. Well, I don't care about mixed marriages. I don't like you're mixing the cultures, because people the children get confused, like I was. And I was like, I want to show y'all I'm American, so I joined the Marines. The Marines was the last military that was segregated. They had the blacks and they had the whites. Boot camp, we were all the same. We were nothing. But when we got out of boot camp, they didn't know what to do with me. I'm not black, I'm not white, so then so they put me in with blacks. And I went to an all-white school. I was in the all-white part of Topeka, so I didn't really understand the black culture. And especially, we're all in the Marines, we're all learning how to kill. And that's where they put me. And this is back in the day when they Black Power, the Black Panthers, they're a terrorist group. They were then. I don't know, they probably are now. I don't know why they would change, but anyway, they were big back then. And now they would shoot people and rob banks and do all, they needed money, so they'd rob banks, and they'd say, oh, well, that's because you're getting hard on blacks, so we're going to rob banks, kind of like they're going to justify looting, I need to survive. Yeah, okay, yeah, so, yeah. So this is what I'm saying. Any excuse will work when people are going to do bad things, so. But it was really, really super bad. And so, like I say, so I'm in the Army, or the Marines, and I made a video talking about all that stuff, so I'm not going to go into it. But that was bad. Went to Vietnam. They put me in an all-white combat unit. I lived in the jungle for 13 months. Most of that 13 months, I was in the jungle. I lived in the jungle. Now, every once in a while, we might spend a week or two or so in bunkers, in some kind of fire base somewhere along the DMZ, Quezon, Contin, places like that. Well, I wasn't in Quezon. I was around Quezon, in the jungle around there. But most of the time, I was living in the jungle. And then we started getting a few blacks started coming into our combat unit. And same thing, I don't know nothing about blacks. So I started getting in with the blacks, and they come over doing this black power stuff, and they were kind of weird, So, but so I didn't understand what was going on in the United States because I'm in the jungle, so I don't know what's going on. And I got out. When I got out, I was only in for a year and a half. 5 months of training, 13 months in combat. So I got out when I was 19 years old. And when I was 19, I came back to the United States. And when I came back to the United States and in Kansas, for one thing, Topeka, they said, you probably better not be in Topeka. So they sent me down to close to the border of Oklahoma down there. They had racial problems. And the thing is, they really didn't know who I was. And they didn't really know what I've been doing for the past 13 months. So when the whites would want to do their rioting thing on me, well then, hey, I don't do this stuff. I don't care what color you are, but whatever it is, you're not going to do nothing to me. I mean, I didn't let war do anything to me. I'm sure the hell I didn't come back here to get killed by a bunch of white folk. So I fought back and did the same thing. Blacks started the same crap on me again. And I own businesses. And if you know anything about owning a business, a lot of personal responsibility. So I can take personal responsibility. The Marines taught you to take personal responsibility and gave me skills. And so, like I say, I didn't put up with any of this crap. And the blacks and the whites were really fighting at that time, even in these little towns that I lived in. And so it ended up the whites hired me to keep the blacks out of their businesses. And then the blacks would hire me to keep the whites out of their businesses. And these weren't grocery store business. I mean, mostly bar kind of stuff, or they'd have some kind of a music festival or something. It'd be kind of like a bouncer, except for I don't mingle with people. I would stay outside. So when people come driving up, hey, it's a black event. When white folk drive up, white folk aren't coming here to have fun. I mean, they don't have their partying clothes on. No, they got weapons. And so I'd take them on outside. And I did the same thing with the blacks. The whites would hire me. So when they're doing their event, well, then when blacks come up there. So those days were very violent. That's the part I'm trying to get across. You don't even know what violence is going on here. Now, eventually, it got to the point where they thought they could, they didn't want to use the muscle attack. They figured out that odds, I'm not scared of odds, so they finally figured out, well, odds aren't going to stop me. So then they brought in weapons. That's what I specialize is in weapons. And so then when they brought out the weapons, then that's when blood was flowing. And it got really, really bad. The police would not get involved in stuff. That's why the blacks would hire me and the whites would hire me. You couldn't call the cops and they wouldn't do anything because it was a racial thing. They didn't want to get involved. So then that's when, and for me, I didn't care. I ran my businesses, and whenever there was a problem, I'd go over there and start doing my thing. And but it was a bloody, nasty mess. I will admit, I never killed anybody. I didn't kill anybody at that time. In the United States, the blacks and the whites, I didn't kill them. A lot of them I put in the hospital. A lot of blood. It was very bad. Because like I say, so this is where my thinking is when I talk about, and from then on, I'm not, then on is what you hear me really talk about. I try not to bring this stuff up because that was all based on hatred. Not anything against me personal, it was hatred, just on my skin color or lack of skin color. And so I know hatred. So when people hate Trump supporters, when a Muslim hates a Christian, I know where this is going to lead. I don't do well with hate. I don't hate anybody. I give everybody an opportunity to be nice and normal. This is Mike. NoStressMike.com.